Welcome to our next unit. So throughout virtual learning, I've been focusing on triangles in geometry, and now we're making a shift and moving into our second virtual unit, which is going to be all about circles. And whenever we start a unit, it's really helpful to know and be familiar with some terms that relate to the topic. So we're going to do mostly vocabulary today and then just end with a quick review. So something that I do want you to have out is a piece of paper and pencil so you can take some notes. And the notes will have the definition and the drawing of the figure. And this is to help you kind of have something to consistently look back on throughout the unit. All right, so we're going to get moving right along. My first question for you to answer on Edpuzzle is, how would you define a circle? You're so familiar with this concept, but how could you put it into words? What is a circle to you? So the way they define a circle in geometry is the set of all points in a plane at a given distance from a given point. So in a way for me to explain that to you is like, imagine you were standing in the middle of a field and someone told you that there was a bundle of gold 2 meters away from where you were standing. So the place you were standing is the given point, and that 2 meters away is the given distance, but they don't tell you in which direction. So if you try to imagine where the gold could be, it's anywhere 2 meters away from you, all the way around you. So that would make like a circle of all different places it could be. All right, so that's what a circle is. So you're gonna pause and write down this definition and draw a figure. Now moving on, the next term is, what is the center of a circle? How would you define the center of a circle? And please don't just write, it's the center of a circle. Try to find a different way of explaining it. So going back to that visual of the gold being buried somewhere, the center of a circle is the point from which all the points of a circle are the same distance. So the center of a circle in that example of what we just said is, you were central to all of the locations where the gold could have possibly been. You were 2 meters away from the outer edge at all points. So that is what they define the center of a circle. So write that down with a picture. Maybe put a little arrow pointing to the dot that is the center. Moving on, the next term, which is going to be really common, we're going to use this term a lot, is called the radius, and there's a visual for you. So how would you describe what that visual is representing? So a radius is the line segment from the center of the circle to the point on the circle. So it represents specifically this line segment. We also can talk about the radius as a length, so either a line segment or a length. So the radius could be 5 centimeters. And it's just the distance from the center of the circle to the outer edge. This is one example. I could have had a radius in a different direction, but it's just a line segment from the center of the circle to the point on the circle. We're writing that down and drawing a picture to go along with it. All right, now we're going to get into some definitions where I'm going to show you examples of the term and then some non-examples of the term, and then I'm going to introduce you to the term itself. So the first one we have here is called a chord. So here are a bunch of examples of chords. AB is a chord, line segment DC is a chord, line segment EF is a chord, line segment HG is a chord, and line segment IJ is a chord. And now here are a bunch of examples of things that are not considered chords. This line segment PQ is not a chord. From R to S, this line segment is not a chord. This curvy port right here that connects T and U is not a chord. And this line VW is not a chord. So looking at what is considered a chord and what is not considered a chord, how would you define a chord? And remember, all the way in chapter 1, we were very specific about the way we wrote definitions. We would say a chord is a blank, we would categorize it, that blank, and you would just be more descriptive. So try to write your definition of what you think a chord is. All right, so the formal definition of a chord is a line segment, that's how it's categorized, whose, and this is where it gets more specific, whose endpoint lies on a circle. So if we look at line segment AB, point A is on the side of the circle, point B is also lies on the circle. Same with DC, it's a line segment where D and C are on the circle. Same with EF, same with HG, same with IJ. So you'll notice that is specifically a chord, and if we look at the examples up here of what was not considered a chord, Q isn't against the edge, R is outside the circle, TU is not a line segment, VW, W is not on the circle at all. So these are all non-chords. So make sure you write that down and draw a picture. You don't have to draw both pictures, just one chord is good enough for me. So the next term we're going to talk about is called the diameter. Similar to radius, this is going to be a really common term we use throughout this chapter. So we have all different examples: line segment AB, line segment CD, and line segment EF. These are all examples of diameters. And these are all examples of non-diameters. So RS is not a diameter, PQ is not a diameter, WV is not a diameter, and TU is not a diameter. So looking at what is a diameter and what is not a diameter, how would you define a diameter? A diameter is a blank that blank. So the definition of a diameter is, the diameter is a chord. So we've already just described chord. So now we can use, now that we know what a chord is, we can use it in subsequent definitions. A diameter is a chord of a circle that contains the center of the circle. So line segment AB is a chord and it contains the center of the circle, so it's a diameter. Line segment EF is a chord and it contains the center, so it's a diameter. Line segment CD is a chord that contains the center, so it's a diameter. So now you're going to write your definition and draw an image as well. Moving along. Our next term we're going to define this way is called a tangent. So these are a bunch of examples of tangents. Line AB is a tangent, line CD is a tangent, line EF is a tangent, and then these are all examples of non-tangents. Line PQ is not a tangent, ray, WV is not a tangent, line segment TU is not a tangent, and line RS is not a tangent. So based on these two different definitions, how do you define a tangent? A tangent is a blank that blanks. So the definition of a tangent is a line, so that's how it's categorized, a line that intersects a circle at exactly, notice how specific that term is, at exactly one point. So line AB intersects a circle exactly once at point B. Line CD intersects a circle exactly once at point C. Line EF intersects a circle exactly once at point F. So we're going to write that down, draw an image to indicate that. You don't have to draw all three, you can just draw one, that's okay. So now we're going to move into arcs, and what an arc is, unlike a chord, an arc is 2 points on a circle and the continuous part of the circle between them. So normally with a chord you would have a straight line connecting point to point, but with an arc it's the portion of the circle that connects the two dots. That's considered an arc. So we're going to write that down in our definition. An arc is 2 points on a circle and the continuous part of the circle between them, and you're going to draw an image of it alongside. So now we have three specific types of arcs. The first one is called a semicircle. It's the purple portion I have right here. A semicircle is an arc of a circle, so we have this arc right here, whose endpoints are the endpoints of a diameter. So you'll see that pink diameter we have there, and you'll see those purple dots are on either end of the diameter, and then we're indicating that this arc is all of the portion of the circle between those two dots on either side of the diameter. So that is a semicircle. It is also half a circle, but this is the specific definition. It is defined as an arc, and the endpoints that goes from one endpoint of a diameter to the other. So we're writing that down and drawing an image alongside it, and we'll move on to the next type of arc. So the next type of arc is called a minor arc. And a minor arc is an arc of a circle that is less than a semicircle. So it's less than half the circle. So you'll see this purple arc I have here is less than half. This would be about half if it went all the way over there. It is less than that, so it's considered a minor arc. And so don't forget to write that down with a picture. You probably can guess what the next term is going to be if this is a minor arc. The next term we're going to be defining is called a major arc, and the major arc of a circle is an arc that is more than a semicircle. So you'll see this purple arc I have on this example is a major arc. It is much more than half the circle, so it is considered a major arc. So write that down, draw a picture to go along with it. Now we're going to get into our last two terms before we start reviewing. So we have our central angle. So a central angle is an angle whose vertex, meaning that point at the corner of the angle, whose vertex is the center of a circle, and whose sides pass through the endpoints of an arc. So this picture is an example of a central angle. You'll see that the vertex of the angle is at the center, and where the angle ends is at the ends of an arc. So this angle right here is called a central angle. It's an angle at the center of a circle going to two ends of an arc. And we're going to write that definition down with the picture. And this definition closely relates to the next definition, which is arc measure. So we can measure the angle of an arc, the measurement of a central angle that intersects the arc measured in degrees. An arc measure, so we measure arcs by the amount of degrees they are. And this situation would say from this point to that point, that is a 70-degree arc. It takes up 70 degrees of a circle. So now that you have that written down, now that we have all those terms written down in our notes, we can now use them to move on to the next portion of class, which is seeing how much we remembered from class today. So we're going to review this pink line I have here, line TG. How would you categorize that? Out of all the new terms we just introduced today, what term is being represented by that line I have right there in pink? All right, next question. We're going to say what is classified as line segment AB? What term is classified as line segment AB, that orange line right there? Next, what term do we define as that line segment OE? What term defines that? And the last for this picture, what do we define as that line segment DC? What are we looking at there? What term is that? So now we'll go over those answers. TG is a tangent. AB is a diameter. OE is a radius. And DC is a chord. All right, moving on. What do we call arc RQ? Specifically, what is that going to be called? All right, next one. What do we call this angle right here? Angle PTR. Next, this is going to be interesting. This is the first time we're seeing this way of representing. Note that instead of having a straight line over, we're indicating arcs with this curved line above the letters. And you can name arcs with 2 or 3 letters. So we're naming this arc RPQ, and we're not naming it arc RQ because that would indicate this smaller portion right here. Naming an arc out of 3 letters tells you what direction it wants you to go in. So it's saying you start at point R, pass through point P, and go to point Q. So that's how we know to name it this way. So what type of term is that arc that we have highlighted in purple? And finally, we have our last question. This arc right here, arc PQ, what term is that? All right, let's see how we did on all those. We'll go back to the beginning. So we have arc RQ here, QR. Arc QR is a minor arc. This angle PTR is a central angle. We don't know the angle measure because it's not indicated, but we do know it's a central angle. This large arc we have here is a major arc because it is more than a semicircle. And our final term is a semicircle. It's passing through the ends of a diameter. So that's all we have for today, guys. about new things to learn, there's one more thing I want you guys to do, which is to head over to the other video, which is going to be story time with Miss McCann. Unfortunately, I don't have the book, but luckily you get to listen to a nice British guy read the story, and it's just a silly math adventure of all different terms related to circles. And you're going to have a quick, short homework assignment based on that. I hope this lesson was a little easy. We have some new vocab terms in our back pocket that we'll be using throughout the unit, and I hope you guys have a great day.